Hello, and thank you for watching this recording from this morning's Winchester Sustainable Business Network meeting around greening your workplace and the productivity gains that you can achieve in your workplace and the improvements to your staff well-being that are possible from even small improvements in the amount of greenery that are around your offices, your workplace and the surrounding environment in your town or wherever your business might be located. We started with a question for all our delegates about how prepared they are for the impacts of climate change that are likely to come now and in the future, and what difference that might mean for your business and whether you are ready for it. And this survey is still open, so if you'd like to scan that QR code or click on the link, you can join in and add to the answers that we've already had, so we can review them again perhaps at a later meeting if we'd like to come back to this. So I'm going to leave that on the screen for a moment just while you grab your phone or click on the link and complete that survey for us. This morning in the room we had a whole range of businesses, first local authorities, architects, local academics, thinking about what those impacts might be in terms of what could happen to your business and therefore what you need to be ready for in the future. So if you've managed to fill in that survey, we'll come back to it in a moment and think about what the answers might be and what you need to do in the context of the well-being and productivity in green spaces. That was the programme this morning with a range of speakers, both from the University of Winchester, who are our host, and from Hampshire County Council, University of Southampton, and also Carbon Footprint, giving us a legal update before we then were able to go on to a tour of the university campus. We are also interested in your feedback about this event and your ideas for other events. So again, if you've got your phone out still, if you can scan the QR code, click on the link, then we would welcome your feedback about this session and your suggestions. Don't worry if you don't have time to scan it now, the slides are available so you can come back to it later. And all the recordings of our previous events, as well as this one, which you've hopefully already found, are available on the Carbon Footprint Sustainable Business Network website. So we have a whole library of different videos from previous events that are available on a whole range of topics. So these were the results in-house this morning at the event, where we found, unsurprisingly for small businesses, that there was some awareness of the potential impacts of climate change on their business, but actually, whilst the awareness might be there, very few businesses take an action, and that's fairly typical of the sort of small and medium-sized businesses. It's only really the larger businesses who are required to do things like double materiality assessments who are actually making progress on what is the impact of climate change on my business and what do I need to do to make sure I'm prepared for it. But I'm sure we've all seen pictures like this before on LinkedIn and social media and in press articles, just highlighting the difference in temperature that we see between shaded areas under trees and with where there's grass areas and on exposed tarmac and pavements. And if you're a Formula One fan or a racing fan, I'm sure you'll have heard them talking about track temperature and how much higher it is than air temperature. But that heat that builds up in the pavements has to go somewhere, and so it goes into the buildings and into your environment and just makes life difficult for people. And Megan is going to talk about a bit more of this from Hampshire County Council's point of view, but it's a really important factor into what you need to do to mitigate health impacts on your staff. And that temperature factor then builds into productivity and impacts the way your staff behave and what they're able to achieve. And for a very basic level, if you've got any staff who've got any form of underlying health issue, they might be asthmatic, they may have heart problems, you could have people struggling with weight or with mental health issues. All of these things get worse on hot days. And with the recent weather of the last month or so, we've seen several periods of very hot weather and people do struggle. You're probably struggling to sleep yourself or your family or your children, and that means your children are then, it's difficult to get them to school in the morning because they're tired and a bit tetchy, and then your staff are arriving at work tired and a bit stressed. And it just slows everything down throughout the day. So you need to think about a way of how you're going to manage those heat impacts in your business. And then there are all the other impacts that we see, as it says on the screen, with transport issues through expanding railway tracks that then slow all the trains down or stop services on certain lines, and we get softening tarmac on hills, so you find cars are delayed and that sort of stuff. And in extreme cases, we also get power failures in the grid that can be temperature related. So there's lots and lots of knock-on effects that could happen to your business that you really need to be wary of, and making yourself prepared for, which doesn't necessarily mean air conditioning your entire building. That's very expensive and bad for the environment. But thinking about maybe air-conditioned rooms where people can go to cool down. And
my name's Megan Saunders and I work at Public Health in Hampshire County Council, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes today talking about the benefits of nature, green and blue spaces for mental well-being. So briefly, just to set the scene, public health is focused on keeping people out of the NHS and keeping them well through preventing diseases. So we work with communities and populations rather than with individuals, and we focus on the causes of the causes. Primarily, the causes of the causes are the building blocks of health, or also called the wider determinants of health. And these include things such as our education and skills, our home environment, our work, the money and resources that we have, and of course the environment in which we grow up, live, learn, work and play. So how does the environment, climate change and health interlink? Well, the UK Health Security Agency acknowledges that our changing climate poses huge health security challenges. It will affect everything from the air that we breathe, to the food that we eat, the water that we drink, the diseases that we might be exposed to, and of course those extremes in temperature. And extremes in temperature are very much dependent on the type of environment in which we live. So the image on the right hand side of the screen shows the differences between an urban built up area without any greenery and that of an area where there is greenery. The materials used in an urban area contribute to the heat that is retained. So man-made materials absorb and retain heat overnight, whereas grass and woodland stays cooler. Research from Europe suggests that urban trees can help to keep an area roughly 2 to 4 times cooler than areas without trees, so it is quite significant. Increases in temperature negatively affect our health, and they also reduce productivity of workers. Specifically for mental health and well-being, hotter temperatures increase rates of anxiety and depression, and also increase the rate of suicide. Looking at air pollution, we also know that urban vegetation contributes to huge savings in health costs each year. So it's really important that when we are designing new developments or areas for regeneration, we are considering the amount and quality of nature and green space included within that design. So alongside the benefits to helping keep us cool, nature and vegetation also benefits mental well-being. So we know that a majority of our population live and work in urban areas without much greenery. However, evidence does suggest that people who have higher exposure to nature by taking breaks outdoors or going for walking meetings report significantly higher work engagement when compared to those who spend most or all of their day in the office. We also know that seeing nature or being in nature reduces the amount of sick leave that people take and also boosts productivity. So it brings huge benefits for both the employees themselves and of course the employers as well through increased productivity. Benefits that green spaces bring. It encourages us to be more physically active. We know that it can help to improve air quality. It can also reduce excessive noise. It encourages us to connect with others, just for example having a little short conversation with somebody when you're out and about going for a walk. And all of this helps us to live healthier and longer lives. Now there is a difference between just physically being in nature and actually connecting with nature, and what we want to encourage is that nature connection, because we know that that is where those tangible real benefits come into their own. And it does also help people to consider how they can support and look after their environment. So this is a real positive for thinking about conservation and climate change as well. When considering our mental health and well-being, we use the 5 Ways to Wellbeing framework. In this example, we set it in the context of nature at work. The first of these is connect, the opportunity to have outdoor meetings in nature spaces, and also potentially bring in a second element around being active through networking or walking meetings in those green spaces is really beneficial. We also know that nature inspires creativity, so it can continually help us to evolve, think of new ideas and keep learning. Nature also provides a fantastic opportunity to give something back through staff volunteering days. And finally, the opportunity to take a moment, just stop, notice and be mindful. Taking screen breaks around nature is really beneficial, whether that's just listening to the birds, looking at the bees, noticing the changes in the season. It's all a great opportunity just to have a moment of calm and refreshment. So when considering designing a new green space for your area, there are a few key elements to make sure that it lands right. We can't just offer a green space to people that's been done and designed by somebody else. We need to make sure that we're providing a space, but also doing that promotional opportunity to connect people with that space, making sure that it's been designed in a very accessible way for all the different types of communities that might be using that space. Maintaining the quality of the space is incredibly important. So both the condition of the amenities and how safe it feels, but also of course that biodiversity quality as well. And making sure that we are engaging with the potential population that might be using that space. So it's providing the things that they want and making sure that we're not inadvertently creating barriers and therefore increasing health inequalities through creating spaces that people can't access. So what's available to help you guys get started? So on the Mental Wellbeing Hampshire webpage, we have a specific nature and mental wellbeing section, and within that there is an area that's specifically for workplaces. So here you'll find a range of articles and information web pages to read to help get you started. This includes things such as the Nature Connected Organisations Handbook, which is a great tool to really understand the benefits of nature connection over purely just nature contact. There's lots of information around biophilic design, thinking about workplaces and employee well-being. I've provided just one example on the page here. And toolkits as well, such as the Business in the Community Guide to Greening a Workplace. So alongside those, I just wanted to highlight the wider toolkit that we have produced for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight region that's more broadly around mental health and well-being in the workplace, and you'll find that link at the bottom of the page there. Finally, here is a list of some starters for 10 in terms of things that you might get started with. So whether that's contacting Hampshire Forest Partnership if you've got just a very boring bit of grass that potentially could benefit from some additional trees to add biodiversity and shade, through to getting involved with the greening campaign or signing up to the pollinator pledge. Hampshire County Council also offer corporate volunteer team days out in nature, so this could be a fun activity with our countryside colleagues. Every June is the National Outdoor Office Day, so this could be a really great way to communicate with your staff about the benefits of getting outside during the workday, and of course the importance of active travel there as well, both from a climate change and environment point of view, but also from a physical activity and health and wellbeing element. If you have a really fantastic case study of something positive that you've implemented within your organisation, then we'd love to hear about it. So please do share the information that you have with the Hampshire 2050 Partnership for the Year of Health and Wellbeing, and all the information can be found on that final link there. I hope you found this interesting, and if you have any questions or comments at all, then please do get in contact with me. My email address is on the first slide.
Good morning, my name is Olivia and I'm a consultant at Carbon Footprint. My main responsibility is supporting companies in reporting their annual emissions, helping them reduce them and set net zero targets. Today we're just going to do a quick overview of legislation and market updates. This is anything that's happened over the past few months, so we'll just run through those. Mainly going to be centred around changes to the water industry, recent pollution incidents. We'll cover a bit of biodiversity net gain and also updates to the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme Phase 3. So to begin with, ESOS Phase 3 Action Plan updates. So those participants that have submitted their ESOS Action Plan before the 5th of June, their ESOS Action Plan dataset will be uploaded by the Environment Agency, and this will be done by the end of July. This information will include the measures that the participant is going to implement, the dates that their actions will be implemented by, and the energy savings, the estimated energy savings that will arise from the implementation of these energy saving measures as well. For those participants that are still working on their notification of compliance or their action plan, or submitted both of these after the 5th of June, their data will also still be published, but we are unaware when this will be yet, but it will definitely be published by the Environment Agency. Currently, over 80% of ESOS participants are now compliant with the notification of compliance and action plans, which is quite a strong figure. This is good, but still a little way to go. I'm aware of there are participants that are still currently doing their ESOS assessments, and they're sort of on quite a tight deadline to do that, as there will obviously be enforcement action by the Environment Agency if they do not do this. And then just a little reminder to submit your notification of compliance or your action plan if you haven't already. Follow the link here. These slides will be shared so you can access this. Moving on to the water industry. So water pollution incidents are on the rise. In 2024, the number of pollution incidents, sewage release incidents increased by 60% in 2024 versus 2023. On the right are some of the headlines that we've seen and that have regularly been covered in these SBN sessions. More recently, the Thames Water received a £122.7 million fine. This was the biggest penalty ever issued to a water company, and it is an astonishing amount. And obviously the whole point of this session today is to reinforce the idea or to reinforce the importance of nature in human well-being and things like that. So the fact that our waters are being damaged, which are quite a vital resource and a vital source of relaxation, connecting with nature, this isn't good to see. So what is being done about these increasing pollution incidents? So you may have seen, I believe this was either earlier this week or end of last week, we are seeing the biggest overhaul of the water sector since privatisation. So the Independent Water Commission released a report with 88 recommendations to improve the current water industry. The main one of these was abolishing Ofwat, and then Ofwat would then be replaced by one single water regulator, and this regulator would be responsible for the entire water system. Currently, if you're not aware, the water industry is monitored by 4 separate regulators, and currently each regulator kind of blames one another for the issues that the water industry is facing. there's no cohesion, it's very complex, and it's basically just not working. So the functions of Ofwat and these other regulators are going to combine, and there's going to be one powerful single regulator. Also in this report by the Independent Water Commission, there were, just to name a few of the other recommendations. Currently, campaigners say that water companies are effectively marking their own homework. So we need a stronger approach to monitoring pollution and sewage incidents, not one where it's currently just monitored by the water companies themselves. We need third-party checks, and the Independent Water Commission advocates the use of AI in these third-party checks to better measure the impact. And then also, unfortunately, bills may have to rise. This is due to massive investment that is needed to effectively allow our water system to catch up to a stage where it should be, to the standard it should be. So we are going to see record investment of 104 billion to improve infrastructure, to modernise the UK's ageing water infrastructure, and to also address these long-standing environmental issues such as pollution and the sewage incidents. So moving on to biodiversity net gain update. So this more strongly links with what we are discussing today. So biodiversity net gain is enforced by the Environment Act 2021, Schedule 14. And biodiversity net gain basically ensures that habitats for wildlife are left in a measurably better state than they were before the development. So developers must deliver at least a biodiversity net gain of at least 10%. So the standard, the quality, the amount of biodiversity habitat needs to be at least 10% better than what it was before that development became a thing. So 17 months on, so the biodiversity net gain was enforced in February 2024. 17 months on, it's still very early days. We're not going to see changes overnight. It is still quite early to see the impact that this biodiversity net gain is having. But there have been a few lessons that have been learnt so far. So the industry has faced challenges, particularly around the need amongst stakeholders to understand the concept of biodiversity net gain and how this works in reality. There are also questions around managing long-term monitoring and maintenance obligations to ensure that these biodiversity gains are sustained. So any habitat improvements must be maintained for at least 30 years. There are questions at the moment of how we can monitor this, how we can sort of say, yes, this biodiversity is being maintained. So there's still a little way to go in terms of the monitoring and management of this. So in summary, moving forward, we need continued commitment, iterative learning, and enhanced collaboration efforts in order to realise the full potential of biodiversity net gain. It's important that developers follow the mitigation hierarchy, or the biodiversity net gain hierarchy, which is in the top right here. So avoid, minimise, remediate, and compensate. So obviously the priority is to avoid any habitat loss, any habitat damage in the first place. If this is not successful, then the effects of the development on habitats, on biodiversity, needs to be minimised as much as possible. These are just a couple of successful applications of biodiversity net gain, examples where biodiversity net gain has been a priority since day one. So for example, Halifax bus station in Yorkshire is an example of a redevelopment. The redevelopment included green roofs consisting of up to 17 species. This really maximised biodiversity in the development, and also the extensive site planting of native species. Another example is Mayfield Park in Manchester. This included a mosaic of natural habitats, creating a real varied and diverse environment. It also involved the removal of obstructions in the river medlock channel. This is known as river daylighting. It basically exposes the river, creates another habitat, and also exposes the water to us humans so we can use it for recreation, to improve our own mental well-being and things like that. So these are both successful examples. The Manchester Mayfield Park example in particular achieved a 90% net gain, biodiversity net gain, in phase 1 of the development. And that's everything that we'll cover in the legislation market updates today. Here's a few useful links. As I said, these slides will be passed around. A few online media articles, some government blogs, things like that, that are worth exploring. If you do have any questions about anything we've discussed today, or any questions at all about what Carbon Footprint do as a company, or if we can support you in any way, please give us a contact. My email address is on the screen here. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
The group now went on to a tour of the university campus to look at what they've done around King Alfred's in their just the little corners where they've been able to leave areas wild and do some planting and make the whole environment really inviting for both the students and staff. Not everyone is lucky enough to have a campus like the University of Winchester where you've got space to do reasonably large amounts of planting. But if you watch the videos on the tour, you'll see they were able to do some really nice things in little corners, which they were able to leave to grow wild for pollinators, for insects, and for animal, hedgehogs and smaller animals and newts and things. And also make the little corners of the campus just attractive and welcoming to staff. So maybe if you're in an office block somewhere or an industrial estate where you don't have those large areas, think about what you could do with just simple things like indoor plants, planters outside the building, just to make the area more welcoming and a bit more comfortable for staff and reduce the amount of tarmac and paved areas that are maybe building up heat around your building. So that's enough from me. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again at the next meeting.